Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am here today on No Soundbites Allowed. My co-host, John Rastuccia, wasn't able to make it today, sadly, but we do have some very interesting things that are going to be happening on this show. In fact, our main effort today is we're going to be speaking with a special guest, and you'll see it on the screen. It is Cary Poarch. Now, I know a lot of people may say, Cary Poarch, I don't know that name. And you'll see the picture and you go, that seems kind of familiar. Well, rather than me tell you about it, let me introduce my guest, Cary. Tell the folks, who is Cary Poarch and why should they know your name?
Well, I promise it's not a philosophical type question. I'm just a normal guy that's most notably in October, I was the CNN insider for Project Veritas. I had many months of undercover footage from the DC Bureau, and over recording, we released everything in the middle of October, and and then off to the races we went, in a nutshell.
That's a nutshell for it. Because it was pretty big news. This was announced. It came out on October 14th. And at the time, you provided and Project Veritas came out with information about CNN and their practices there, which it was huge. I mean, things about the agenda on impeachment, about how to treat other members of Congress, just the editing of stories and what criteria makes it to news, not news, because of a political basis. Let me ask you, how many years were you at, or how long were you at CNN?
Yeah, no, it's been a wild ride. So from start to finish, I got there in the middle of June or first part of June of 2017, and then up until when I was a contractor, so I worked for a third party company, but CNN was our actual client, so I had a CNN badge and I went to work at the bureau every day. But from start to finish is about 2.5 years from when I was hired to when I was fired.
So it's a pretty decent amount of time. You got to know people, you got to know the institution and organization. Can we say, what did you do there?
Yeah, I was a low-level guy, most likely, most would say. But what I did is I was a technical and engineer type guy, where I would basically assist the actual CNN engineering staff and the satellite trucks to where we would go out from site to site, run fiber, run cable, run everything we needed to, pop up the dish, test the signal, and make sure that what you saw on the ground through whether it was, Anderson Cooper, Tapper, any of those guys would make it from, the ground up to the satellite and then back down to, your TV or iPhone or Android.
Okay. So in that time, in doing that work, got to ask, were you surprised? I mean, when did it dawn on you that, hey, these guys aren't doing exactly the best thing?
I mean, pretty early on, I would say. I'd say within the first few weeks. Because remember, I full disclosure, I came in there, a registered Democrat, pretty far left, I would say. I supported Bernie in the 2016, primary season and whatnot. So, I mean, I came there thinking that I was doing the right thing, resisting Trump, all that jazz. But I'd say within a few weeks, I would always hear the 9 a.m. conference call. I didn't really know who it was at first. I just knew that it was someone on the phone that was very important, because it was always being played, and it was the guy was directing the business one way or the other. And even early on, I saw kind of a, hey, Trump did this good thing here, but hey, we're not going to cover that. We're going to go over here because this makes him look bad. So even early on, I started noticing that things weren't quite always, the bastion of journalism and covering both sides, so to speak. I noticed it was pretty one-way streets pretty early on.
Now, Cary, yesterday we had a conversation. We talked about a lot of things. And by the way, let me first interject here or interrupt the flow. How's your wife doing? I know Monday's the big day. She okay today?
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Michael. Yeah, she's doing great. We're just finishing up the last minute type things, getting ready to head on out to the hospital to get ready for our birth, our first child. So we're super excited about it. Thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely. And I thank you for taking the interview with this coming up. I wanted to make sure she was all right. That's first and foremost. And I'm looking
No,
forward.
she's great. No, thank you so much. It's just like I said, the last few days, the finish line, so to speak, and
Mhm.
especially during the coronavirus type thing. We're just thankful that I can be in the room with her now. I know many states and many cities have lockdowns to where like not even a spouse or support person can be in there. It's just the mother and that's it for the whole labor process. So we're just thankful that I'm still able to be there with her, whenever it comes.
Well, I had not heard about that. And I'm even more happy that you can be in the room then.
Right.
Uh, it's a unique experience, I'm told. I don't have kids myself. But so let me come back to CNN and your experience, your history. So, like myself, it sounds like, and I think we had mentioned, you grew up as a Democrat. You always were a Democrat.
Well,
So,
actually, no.
oh,
Let me stop you right there. I mean,
oops.
I was born and raised in Alabama and stuff, so mainly a red meat state,
Okay.
so to speak. So like I grew up, really hard conservative, but not really knowing that's what I was. It's just the culture.
Right.
And then going through the college system, going, the other way, left, and then
Right.
finally, I find most of my, like, full disclosure, like I find most of my home politically, as a libertarian most often.
Right.
It wasn't until the last few years, especially during the Bernie campaign, that I kind of just went full leftism and I was a full blown leftist. I went up to, but not including, breaking Starbucks windows. But that ideologically, that's kind of where I was at.
Okay.
The whole Bernie thing, and then of course, coming to CNN and seeing stuff that didn't quite rub me the right way. Like I always wanted to pride myself as a seeker of truth. I say that all the time, and but yeah, it was one of those things where I started noticing where the finger was on the scale, so to speak. Like any and everything that was Trump did bad, we reported, but we didn't report anything even moderately okay or good, or we tried to find some way to spin, good things into bad. So it's just like, wait a minute, why are we trying to like destroy Trump? Because he's going to do it on his own. That was my mindset. He's going to trip over a coffee table on his own. Why are we trying to help him? So that's what initially kind of just raised my antenna, so to speak, and then look around.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. I
No, no
misunderstood.
worries.
Uh, so, what what made you decide that Project Veritas was the process to go through? What made you say, "Hey, I need to tell someone about this"?
Mm. Well, it's a lot of different things that came into one. Michael, was it didn't happen overnight. So I started my journey just finding. Remember, I said that I just started noticing things that weren't quite the way it was portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
So I had depending on how you look at it, a slow and or a rapid ideological shift. So once I started seeing that CNN wasn't telling the whole story or a totally different, misleading story, I started researching on my own through independent media sources, like your Steven Crowders, your
Mm-hmm.
Breitbarts, Tim Pools, even Jimmy Dores and some of the progressive type stuff that I still listen to from time to time. And all of them were telling me a totally different story than I was being fed through the mainstream. And so I think that started within about six or less months of starting CNN was when I started that rabbit hole, so to speak. I know the mainstream likes to call YouTube a rabbit hole of
Yeah,
degeneration. And of course, everyone that disagrees with you is a Nazi, apparently, right? Remember that?
always. I get
Um,
that a lot.
yeah. So I'd say probably so. CPAC 2018 rolled around,
Right.
and remember that was about a little less than a year. Then I was a little less than a year of employment there. I didn't get to work that one. It was my colleague, and remember I was still kind of on the fence at that point. But in my mind, I'm like, man, I may want to try to do CPAC of 2019 just to kind of be there and, be around the people that I've been watching on YouTube and various media channels and stuff like that. So keep in mind, the distance from 2018 CPAC to 2019 was pretty much where I made most of my ideological shift.
Okay.
And again, I had to keep it secret at work because it was one of those groupthink mentalities where, like, obviously HR policy-wise, you couldn't discriminate for anyone for being a libertarian or conservative or God forbid, a Trump supporter, but there was always that unwritten, like, hey, if this is the way you think, whatever, you just can't voice it or else you'll be, what's it called? Basically discrimination in the workplace, just under the radar, so to speak.
Right.
Social distancing before it was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. That promotion just somehow couldn't get to you.
Yeah, just went to someone else apparently.
Right.
So the from February 2018 to February 2019, that's kind of where I made my biggest jump. And by that time, I always like to say I was about 80 or 90% red pilled in that year, just watching independent sources like your, like I said, your Crowders and everything, slightly offensive, Fleckus Talks, like all those people that I'm sure you and I, that ecosystem that I'm sure you listen to as well, like David Webb and Larry Elder and all those types of people.
Yeah. Spoke to David actually spoke to David at CPAC 2019 while I was covering that. I'm surprised I didn't meet you then.
Well, yeah.
Well, maybe I did. I don't know.
Well, no, in 2019 I was working. I mean, I'm sure.
Oh, I was in Media Row.
Probably. Yeah, I was on Radio Row. Well, the truck was in the back, and of course I was walking up and down Radio Row and just kind of in and out of the different breakout sessions. So I'm sure we probably saw each other. We just obviously didn't know who each other was.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so 2019 CPAC rolls around. Remember, I'm like fully red pilled, and I'm there basically. I'm working for CNN, and I'm kind of just fanboying out, for lack of a better term, because I'm able to kind of sit and talk to all the people that I said I watched online and that were responsible for my shift. And it was kind of funny just walking around with a CNN badge. So got a few crazy looks like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm working, but I couldn't tell them I'm one of you. So, but yeah, just the story goes, and on several interviews, but I love telling it that I was, at that time I was at my wit's end. I was losing sleep. I was taking prescription medications to just go to sleep many nights just because I had trouble, because I came to the realization that not just CNN, but all the mainstream media, like, I was now a cog in a wheel that was responsible for deceiving and misleading millions of people every day that take CNN and MSNBC and all that take what they see on the Chiron as gospel that's 100% fact, which in our case is not the case. It's just not all, but I would say a decent amount of opinion masquerading as facts. And so I was having trouble sleeping, and that's where I was, Michael. And then I always knew I wanted to do something. And then it was one of those, I like to call it just divine appointments. I saw James O'Keefe doing it was either, I can never remember, it was either a Heritage Booth interview or an Epic Times. I just remember the color blue. And O'Keefe was sitting there, James was on sitting in a chair on Radio Row doing an interview. And, I knew who he was. Even when I was a lefty, I like him because he was taking down my people, but I respected him because you just can't argue with tape. It's like, right. Well, what's the context? I'm like, well, you can read body language, see facial features and gestures. Like, I mean, when you see it on tape, it's there. And so it just kind of clicked in me, and I looked on the agenda, and I was like, okay, so he's on next on the main stage, and I went there, and it was one of those things where he was debuting, or he already recently had debuted the Facebook Insider, and it's just the universe or whoever, whatever is out there just spoke to me. It's like, you know what, this is it. This is what I can do. And so I just found my way downstairs to talk to him, to get close enough to him to just say, hey, I work for CNN. I might have some information for you. Let's talk. And I guess with the book signing, you only get 10 or 15 seconds with someone before, the line goes through. So, right. I bought a book with money I didn't have on the credit card and got in line, got a signature. And it's so funny to segue, because James and his team, they actually found the tape of our first meeting of that actual book signing thing. And it was wild to see it because it brought everything back. It's like, hey, I work for a 3-letter agency. And he's like, oh, who's that? And he said, CNN. And he has the worst poker face ever, which is a good and a bad thing. He's like, he brought his hands up to his chin and literally he said, oh boy. And so, and then that was that. I mean, no decision was made that day or even in the first month or so. Like we were, trading conversations, getting to know one another for the first month or so, just because we both had a lot to lose if we both weren't 100% legit.
Right.
He was worried about me being like a plant. I was worried about him, like I didn't know, I see the tapes and everything, but you still never know what you're getting into, especially with, like, I didn't have a whistleblower hotline that I could call and ask advice. So,
yeah, there's no way to really know how to do that next step. Yeah.
Yeah, or what it entails and everything like that. So, I mean, I'm just going to fast forward a little bit. So that was in February or March. It was the end of February of 2019. Again, he and I, like I said, I like to call it like courting each other, like doing a dance for the first month to make sure we could trust each other. And I forget what it was, but something happened at work like a month or so after he and I initially talked, or at that CPAC, and just something snapped, and I just like, I can't do this anymore. And that's when I called him and sent him a message. I'm like, hey, look, let's do this. Let's hit the gas pedal. And that's when I started kind of learning the ropes and how to, wear a camera and use different devices and just kind of like get my feet wet of how to do it. And then, of course, 5 or 6 months later, we see the tapes in October. About an hour of like actual content on the 4 tapes that we released, because that's what I found in the media. Like, it's hundreds and hundreds of hours of just nothing to get to the nuggets,
Right.
And off to the races we went.
Oh, absolutely. Now, let me ask you, for people who are not familiar with the Facebook 2019 and the insiders there, it was talking about shadow banning, an issue that I've been very, very outspoken about because I'm an advocate of the First Amendment. And I've been, and I still believe I'm a victim of shadow banning. Like most conservatives, it's hard to find our information as we speak to the public. Did you see a connection? Is there a connection in your mind between the shadow banning and what CNN does in its agenda on politics?
Well, I mean, I don't make sure I understand the question. I mean, I don't know if it's the mainstream, like doing the actual shadow banning, but I know it's definitely seen. And of course, I can't point to the smoking gun. You'd have to look at like the other insiders that work in tech and the coding side.
Right.
But I do know that they actually work in concert, which was, actually evident when, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but shortly after my story, I mean, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Epstein bombshell that Veritas did a few weeks after. So to back up for people that may not know, that story is about a month or so after or less after my exposed CNN tapes dropped, another insider inside of ABC contacted James to basically feed him some tape of Amy Robach, basically between segments, just talking to her producer or whoever else is on stage at Good Morning America, just talking about, hey, and again, this is a beautiful shot. Everything's in clear camera and audio. It's not the shaky stuff that we're used to seeing. It's like an actual professional camera person. And Amy, a lead anchor, is basically saying like, yeah, I had the whole Epstein story 3 years ago, but they quashed it. They spiked the story so we could get the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry interview and protect, this, that, and the other. It had Clinton. It had all these players. And basically it was her admitting that ABC spiked the story for political gain for 3 years. And of course we can then, postulate pretty comfortably that, how many other children were harmed during that additional 3-year span. You know what I'm saying? And then the whole, like, as big of a story as that was that we were fortunate enough to break, the story after the story was what was most intriguing, because you can look at this any time, was once that story broke, like ABC didn't struggle. They didn't strive to find why the story broke. They were trying to find the leak. And they were grilling people, Gestapo style, kind of shutting him in rooms and grilling him, scouring over emails, and they thought they found the smoking gun by one of their reporters that left ABC to go to CBS.
Right.
So they spent all these hundreds of man hours digging through these emails and evidence chains or whatever, and then, hey, we got her. They called ABC or CBS, and then CBS fired that lady. It turns out that lady, I can't remember her name, Bianco, I think, Ashley Bianco.
I think so.
And she wasn't even the insider. Like, Megyn Kelly interviewed her. She's like, hey, did you know? James was like, no, I don't know who Veritas and O'Keefe was until this whole thing. So there was a coordinated effort between not only ABC, but the cabal of media companies and tech to basically find that person, punish her instead of punishing the company for spiking the story. And there's several tapes on Twitter from O'Keefe's and company's page where, like, for instance, going back to my story, that we did the hashtag expose CNN, it was getting hundreds of thousands of tweets and not even trending. Then it was misspelling this trend. Same with the hashtag Epstein cover up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one got even multiples of mine. I mean, it dwarfed mine, and they were basically forced to make it trend, but they were basically manipulating the spelling. Like, instead of Epstein with an EI, they were switching it to IE and Epstein to mess up the algorithm to, pad the numbers. So
Right.
It's like this correlation where tech and media are kind of in bed with each other. And again, I'm not that particular whistleblower, but you can look around with even our Google whistleblower and Twitter insiders. Like, it's basically a weird, I like to call it an incestuous relationship between tech and media to basically suppress one side of the conversation.
Oh, I definitely see it in that manner. And by the way, for people who are watching this on screen, or if you're listening to this, I have in the link of the description a bunch of the links of everything we're talking about. And as you're speaking, Cary, I'm actually bringing it up, and I'm bringing it onto screen as you're speaking so people can see
some
of these things you're mentioning. So as you're talking, I'm actually silently here on the side bringing up everything.
Well, appreciate the diligence. I mean, it's one of those things where, remember, I had about a year and a half to basically digest all this new world of information. And for people that are hearing the story for the first time, even though it's had millions of views and hits and clicks, it's still only a fraction of the population. So whenever I tell this story, when I'm introduced, whether on stage or something like that, man, I never heard this story. I'm like, what is this? What is? I'm like, you're trying to compact a year and a half of just total knowledge, not just a CNN. We're talking about Twitter suppression, vote suppression, all these other things. Basically drinking from a fire hose is what I'm trying to compress in 30-second soundbite.
Oh, I understand completely, and that's why I like this format, because you can speak a little bit longer without having to.
Yeah, of course.
Have commercials or cut off essential parts. Now.
Right, but once you start digging into it and pulling that thread, it'll blow your mind. And,
oh yeah.
It's it goes from wait a minute. So because keep in mind, even some of the people I got on tape, that have been there 20 years, they're like, man, CNN, they will literally say Patrick Davis was once a great friend of mine, and obviously I know I'm not on his Christmas card list now, which I understand. Super guy, but he's on tape saying CNN used to be the best. We used to be a true, bastion of journalism, and now I hate what we've become. I don't even listen to the 9 a.m. Zucker, the CEO calls, because they're just bullshit. It's all about, attack the I hate Trump train. And, it's all about attacking Trump and not reporting the actual news. And up until this coronavirus thing, CNN's ratings were in a nosedive, and it was only a matter of time, I thought, before AT&T pulled the plug, since they bought CNN. Now, granted, the coronavirus has upped their ratings again because people want to tune in and get information. But even if you watch the show, the nightly show that Anderson does, it's like Facts and Fears, which is exactly what they do and they're good at. It's boosted their ratings back to, decent levels because of the outbreak. And everybody's scared, and I get that. But it's just one of those things where people just want the news, and they're turning to independent media versus mainstreams. No matter what the letters are on the bottom right of the screen, people are losing. The Nielsen ratings are saying that, and all these pollings are saying people are losing trust in the mainstream media at large and going to independent people that aren't bankrolled through corporations or their interests. Hey, the only bankroll they have is people like myself that throw Tim Pool a couple bucks a month on his Patreon,
Right. And it makes a big difference for all of us, small guys. Those couple of bucks make it possible to get the stories and make sure people hear about them, like yours.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, let me, and for people who don't realize, it's hard to find this information because, as an example, just going to Google and doing a search on CNN whistleblower, you're sometimes you'll, and because of my algorithm, I find Project Veritas, but they basically buried the story. I mean, it's and the same thing with ABC. If you don't know what to look for, you're not going to find links to this. So, given that the CNN tried to bury the story, given that social media makes it harder and Google and search engines make it harder to find this story, let me ask you, one, about the aftermath for you personally, and two, for others who might be considering being a whistleblower, is it worth it?
Man, it's a tough call.
Yeah, it is.
mean, and everybody's situation is different. So, one thing I can say, I never want to miss an opportunity to, shout out, James O'Keefe and Veritas. I mean, like any normal logical person can say, like, well, what's my risk? What's my exposure if I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, once I made the decision, like, I knew that I would probably never work in media again. And that was a really tough pill to swallow because I loved being in the mix. I loved being behind the scenes and actually, like miking up senators and congressmen and women and these powerful players on both sides of the aisle. Like, I loved being in the mix and in the room. So it was a hard pill for me for that to swallow. But also there was a fear of, financial and personal safety. Like, am I ever going to be able to get hired again? Like, what's going to happen to me and my family? But again, Veritas, James, man, they definitely stand by their people. They protect their sources. I mean, James has even gone to jail once or twice because he wouldn't give up his source. That tells you what a man of integrity he is. At great personal loss to him. So I definitely tell people that if they're inside any of the agencies and they got something that is just weighing on their hearts, like I said, hey, there's no better outlet than James O'Keefe and Veritas. Like, they truly will take care of you, protect you. One of the biggest things that I was promised was that, hey, if indeed, CNN or Turner, whoever came after me legally, then I would have access to their lawyers and stuff, which that was the biggest selling point for me, was just, hey, if, crap hits the fan legally and physically, like, hey, at least I got some cover legally to kind of mitigate whatever damage could be. So that was, to me, the biggest selling point, so to speak. They didn't pay me for the story. I've gotten a lot of criticism about that online, like, oh, you just did this for money, or how much did Veritas pay you for the story? I'm like, Veritas didn't pay me not $1 for the story. That's like, they were just there to be a medium. What they did do is they helped push my GoFundMe with their network and their influence over Twitter. So, I set up a GoFundMe. This is the verbiage, like, hey, whistleblower, I just need a few dollars to basically step into our next chapter of life. Now, that was where they came in and were also heroes in capes. Because remember, like, at the time, I think James had like 650,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. So I was able to push that GoFundMe to like the top of the page, and man, there was like a few thousand donors that came in through that, and they gave me, we got from 0 to 100K in like 36 hours. So it's an incredibly boon and a blessing that there was that network of patriots that were willing to step up and chip in 5, 10. There was one donation that was almost $700. I'm like, whoa.
Well,
so just people got behind it. So, granted, like I said, that was an incredible blessing. That money definitely helped us slide into our new area in life. Like, I'm just working a corporate America job right now in Florida. We're about to birth our first child, and that's all I wanted to do, was to do this and to go live a normal life. You know, and James and the team did that.
Well, I can tell you, and I have it on screen right now, the GoFundMe page, you had 108,000 out of a goal of 100,000, 3,000 donors, and that was created on October 14th. It was you without the beard. Very different look. Different look. I don't know. I personally like the beard, but okay. And
Me too, but if we run for office one day, I know it'll have to go. So we'll see what
yeah,
happens.
that's true.
But yeah, it was a record. I mean, it went from 0 to 100K in like 36 hours. It was insane.
So, and I think it's important, by the way, not only the GoFundMe aspect of it, but also mentioning that with Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, the whistleblower, becoming the whistleblower for them was not something that left you dangling. They didn't leave you out there on your own, but you were actually part of their team. They protected you and took care of you. And I assume
Right.
that's
It
what.
was totally.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was totally different then because if you actually research just general whistleblowers, I mean, there's dozens and hundreds over the course of American history, and many of them ended up divorced, penniless, in jail, blackballed, everything like that. The difference was coming through to doing it through an organization like Veritas is it definitely provided legitimacy and cover. Now, granted, the mainstream likes to paint Veritas as a shady organization, does this or that. I mean, they're just, again, you can't argue with tape. It's there. The difference is now there's an infrastructure set up. Like I think I'm like the fourth or fifth insider to come forward. I mean, let me put it this way. So whoever was inside ABC,
Yeah.
this was what made me cry, is that they referenced me in part of their motivation to not only come forward, but come to Veritas. And I mean, think about that. You literally, the ABC story, like that is the biggest story of at least the decade,
It was huge, yes.
And they work at ABC. But this person, again, I have no clue who they're, man, woman, whatever. They couldn't go to their boss. They couldn't go across the street to even Fox or CBS. They chose to leak that video to James. Like, what other legitimacy do you need? I mean, now he's 6 or 7-0 on lawsuits brought against him of First Amendment type stuff. I mean, I'm with you, Michael. I'm a rabid absolutist on First Amendment. Like, if you're not directly threatening harm, to me, all bets are off. Like, hey, you say whatever you want to say. That's just me. Again, as long as you're not doing physical threats or anything like that, or inciting to violence, all bets are off in my mind. And of course, that gets me into some hot water with certain groups. But
of course,
yeah. But I mean, it's the thing. It's just basically bringing some of the darkness into the sunlight, and that's what him and the team do. I mean, again, the Google insider, Zach Voorhees. I mean, if your listeners, I'm sure you can probably put that in your description box too. To me, that one was the scariest one, where it was basically talking about Google conspiring in documents and PowerPoint presentations of how to basically manipulate the populace into thinking and voting a certain way without them even realizing it.
Terrifying.
Like, that is terrifying.
Absolutely. And actually,
to answer your question, long-winded though, whistleblowing in this day and age is it's obviously still very risky, but it's not nearly as crazy as it used to be. Now, granted, I mean, I suffered great social loss. Like, I mean, I've had friends that I've known for 20 plus years that now won't even talk to me. I mean, people that I've literally known for 20 plus years, kind of tarred and feathered me online, and without even reaching out to trying to get my side of the story, they just all went into their separate political camps and camped out there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I garnered a lot of support from one side and a lot of anti-sentiment from the other. I mean, I kind of figured that, but you really find out, what I'll tell future whistleblowers is you really find out who your true friends are when you do something like this. Would I do it again with what I know now? Absolutely. I mean, granted, I might pause for a second with what I know now, but I would still, step across that line because I feel so much better on this side of the fence. Not political fence, but just after releasing the information to the public and letting the public kind of see what it is.
Well, that's important. I think that's a very important aspect because, I mean, if you can't sleep at night, you can't live with yourself. That's a problem. If you're doing something and you don't feel right about it, that's a problem. And not enough people say, hey, wait a minute, let me speak about that. Let me let someone know, because that's how you get things to be better. At least that's what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. And I don't care who people vote for. I think I said this in the initial interview, that I don't care who people vote for. I just want them to have the true information so where they can freely make up their mind.
Now, let me ask you this. I didn't get to see you at CPAC 2020. This all came about, a lot of it, and I've got to get credit to John Rastusha. He did some great work, and he contacted you, and we were able to speak.
Oh,
And
he's a bulldog. He's a great kid.
oh yeah, that kid's got a future, absolutely.
Yep.
I saw you, but I did, and I'm sad. My pictures with you at CPAC are a little blurry, and I apologize. So let me ask you this. I didn't get a chance to see you there. You were on stage of CPAC. I'm pretty sure, did you ever expect that you'd be in front of a crowd? I think at that day it was 5,000 in the room, 20,000 watching, I believe.
It was wild, man, and it's just the sheer change that something can happen in a year, where, I mean, you saw it from stage where it was an immediate rush, like it was intoxicating, for lack of a better word, but more so than that was kind of the just behind the scenes thing. We're like, wow, I'm in the same room that I was a year ago, but now I'm on stage and not in the back with the media row, for completely different reasons. And it's just crazy how, God, the universe, whoever, whatever that you believe in can basically change your life in the span of a year.
Yeah.
And it was, when you want to do the right thing. So it's just, that to me was the wildest part. Like I'm a huge extrovert. The people that know me, my wife even kind of gets on to me sometimes, where like, stop talking to people. Well, now there's an excuse because, coronavirus, like stop talking to random strangers. But I've always been, very gregarious, outgoing person. And I love speaking. I love, throwing seeds of vision, and just like trying to inspire people to be. I'm trying to inspire the next people to come forward the way that I was inspired. I know that may sound kitschy or cliche, but it's so true, where, each one reach one, or each one bring one. And we got a couple people, I'm not going to say the number or where at, but we got a few people that we were speaking to after that, we'll see what comes of it, that'll work inside some different places that would be of some interest. And again, we'll see where it goes. But that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to find those one or two people that can truly bring light to some pretty shady stuff in their respective industries. But yeah, to answer your question, it was an insane rush. And just the funny part was, I forgot that, because I'm backstage, back behind the curtain, and James is wrapping up his portion of it, so I know when I'm coming out. And I totally forgot that there was that big red runway to the podium. So I felt like I'll call it a Mr. America, where I'm like, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip.
First thought I would have too. It's like, don't trip. Everyone's watching. That's the first thought you're gonna have. Oh my God, everyone's gonna see me trip. Oh my God.
Yeah, because and I saw a few of the like HuffPo writers and stuff live tweeting that, it's that same D bag that's James O'Keefe's rat effing F organization. That was one of the HuffPo senior people at live. So it's just that type of thing, because I knew that all the cameras and eyes were on me. So it's just one of those things. It's like, come out, and I'm like, oh crap, bleep out in my head, oh crap, it's like 50 feet away.
Yeah, that's. I've never been on that big a stage. I've talked to a couple thousand people in some speeches, but I've never.
You were a candidate for office as well, so I'm sure you've been in more of the thick than I have. But it was definitely a rush. It was, I don't know what it sounded like from your end, but it was deafening from on stage, and it was a lot of fun looking back. My wife recorded it. They were back home in Florida while I was up in D.C. and. She sent me like a little Instagram video that she made with all the family watching it. So it's those cool emotional moments that will last a lifetime, and hopefully we can up the ante and just go to bigger places. And again, it's not about glory. It's about finding the people that can truly shed a light on what's going on. Like we literally have a goal eventually to have like an army of like 100 or 200 whistleblowers inside different agencies.
Well, I hope so, because by showing daylight, we get things better. Corruption never stops. It always festers in the dark. The more daylight we bring, the better it is for everyone at the end of the day. Whether or not that corporation or an industry likes it, that's a different thing. It's what's best for the public, I think.
Absolutely, and that's why the company was James and them were basically trying to reach out and recruit people that are inside, healthcare and ports of entry, Like, I can't imagine what kind of shady stuff is going on right now in different agencies with, our whole pandemic situation going on. Like like the whole thing in Puerto Rico, like there was those warehouses full of supplies that were hidden somewhere.
2 years after the
I
fact.
wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, to me, again, I'm just speculating, but who knows if that's similarly happening here? Like, hey, there's a bunch of aid hidden somewhere, and we just need people that know about it to step up and blow the whistle, for lack of a better term.
Hopefully, if there's a stash of ventilators somewhere, and
right,
and no one's talking about it, and it's not moving because, like we saw with the funding, the $2 trillion in funding, the Democrats didn't want to give President Trump the win, so they had to have something on their side.
Right. Let's hold up the economy and stuff, so we can get some refugee type resettlement type packaging or whatever it may be. And it's just not the time to play politics. Like, I wouldn't. What I would have cared if Hillary was president, obviously, but if it was reversed and we had the Republicans holding up for some stuff, like, I would have screamed for their head too.
Yeah, we would have demonized them, rightly so, because that's not what this time should be about. Let me ask you, speaking about coronavirus, family's all safe, everyone's okay. I know your wife is in good health, it sounds. And is everyone else okay, all friends and family?
Yes, sir. Thanks for asking. I mean, all mine are pretty well insulated. We've been pretty much obeying the distancing and all the guidelines. I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that's allowing me to work from home. So, I mean, I do understand that there are millions of people out there who don't have that luxury. I'll call it a luxury right now. So I'm extremely fortunate. So, and we're like I said, when we have that, we're obeying the directives to, like, not only not go out unless we absolutely have to. I mean, we're not quite doomsday preppers, but we're prepared.
Right.
We have a stash. No, everything's going well. How about yourselves up there in New York? Like, I know you guys I know John's up there in New York, and are you up there too?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm in Southern Tier, Binghamton, New York area.
Man, how are y'all doing? I mean, I know it's pretty much ground zero from what the numbers are, right?
Stir crazy. Personally, I find this to be a flu. This is very survivable, and that's an important thing for everyone to know. 98% of everyone who has had it or will have it will survive. And I think that's not told enough. We're hearing too much hype about how many people have caught this. We should talk about how many people have survived this. I think that's the bigger story. But it's turned New York into everyone's stir crazy. I can tell you that. And it's taxing, and we're in a recession, not in just New York, the nation. And people have to be prepared for that because I see this going 9 months before we even start to see an economic return, even with the stimulus package we have. And people need to prepare. I've had conversations with people. We're expecting 10 to 15% of businesses, small businesses, probably to close. If it's
terrifying.
And that's for most places that aren't New York City, which is almost everywhere in the world. This is going to crush businesses. This is going to affect people's lives. And the more people start getting that in their mind, that you've got to be prepared for that, I think the better. And so I share that with your family as well. Let me also ask a lighter note, a lighter question, because you're obviously a bodybuilder. Because that's just, you don't get that physique just by genes alone. I have to believe you're a bodybuilder, and I know a couple of my bodybuilding friends, which I am not, would ask, has this coronavirus affected your workout? How did you adapt?
Yeah, I mean, it's, excuse me. So, I mean, yeah, I think when the internet is always unforgiving and amazing at the same time and awful, it's like there was a picture of me and James up there when I'm walking on stage, and it's like, look, it's called this is the Chad whistleblower. I almost died when I saw that. But yeah, no, and it's like I'm a decent sized man. I will say that. I love to do like hit type workouts like CrossFit and that type of workout. Now, granted, I have just straight up been lazy the last couple weeks. But I'm definitely been, you know, how you say, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go work out, and you just never do. So it's just one of the things like I have to. I've been off the wagon for a couple weeks, eating like crap and like nutritionally. And so, yeah, I just have to get back up on the horse and go. Like our neighborhood is kind of tucked away, so it's a perfect running path. And there's like a kid's jungle gym, which I could probably just take my gloves and do, you know, like those type of body weight type of circuit workouts. But it's definitely affected it. But I mean, I have no excuse. I mean, I literally work from home. I can go out on my lunch break and get a run in, or do some push-ups and squats and pull-ups and things like that. So I appreciate your noticing my physique.
Hey,
I get that
it's a
lot.
good thing. It's a good thing, and I
Yeah,
have
no,
friends who are bodybuilders. I am not. I am the example of what happens when you don't work out at all. Although for 52, I think I'm doing pretty good. But
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. It's just I got to get back on the horse now. Granted, all our gyms closed, as I'm sure it's the same up there.
yeah,
So, while my gym itself does like Zoom workouts, like group workouts, I'm just, you know, it's not quite my thing. But again, I have to adapt. So I'm either going to just purchase one of those Bowflex dumbbell sets soon, or something there where I can do like some decent workouts at home. Because I'm getting a little stir crazy too. Because I love, like most people that work out. I mean, I don't consider myself a bodybuilder. I love to lift weights, but in a circuit form where, you know, I'm not just working biceps, I'm working everything. And,
full
and I can
body.
go dovetail into another spot of the internet where people will beat up on each other because the slightest difference in opinion is rah. So, but
Yeah.
I do love weights, but I love to do circuits and what's called compound movements where, you know, instead of just working a bicep curl, I'm working like 3 or 4 different muscle sets simultaneously. So, but yeah, and everybody should spend this time to work out in their own fashion, because that releases endorphins, it increases your immune system. You know, there's several other benefits ad nauseum to doing some type of physical activity, mainly nowadays. And what we're in right now, Michael, just cure boredom and get you outside and get some vitamin D, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I should do that myself. I'm going to end this with 2 questions.
Sure.
One, for the coronavirus, what would you say is your favorite must watch, must read, either book or movie or both if you want, for the coronavirus that you would say, hey, if you've got time, folks, well, we all have time, go check this out. So that would be one. And the second question would be, is there something a message you would want to get out to my audience, to anyone who would watch this, anything that you want to tell them that we haven't addressed already?
Yeah, sure. And Michael, thanks again for having me on. Like you and John, it was so cool to meet John at the at CPAC, and then of course you by extension over the phone. I mean, this has been a blast, and I'm sure you guys have a great audience. Now, to clarify, are you asking for like books, like just basic stuff that I'm watching or reading to pass time, like out of boredom? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah. That since you've been cooped up like the rest of us, what's the thing that you said, hey, I haven't had a chance to watch or read this or see this movie. I'm so happy I did. You should try it too.
Sure. Just like most people, my wife and I were like, I mean, I'm just saying the segue to tee up the show that we just got done watching, because, you know, within the last 2 years, she and I have had a roller coaster of a life, like from, you know, moving into DC, being like her losing her work and us surviving in DC on one income, getting pregnant, you know, Veritas, and, you know, then I mean, we've had a crazy life the last couple of years, but we just got done last night watching the Tiger King on Netflix, and man, it's like a 7 or 8 episode roller coaster. Like it is a rabbit hole.
Okay.
And it's like I could make fun of it. I call it a living Billy Mays meme, but wait, there's more. I mean, it kept getting crazier and crazier, and we couldn't turn away. And you know, that's why I overslept yesterday for our first interview. It's like we were up till 3 a.m. just watching the dang show. I mean that, and I'm a big Homeland guy. It's the last season of Homeland that's on right now, so I'm really
Mhm.
enjoying seeing that buttoned up. Um, and of course, I might just go back and rewatch the whole thing of Breaking Bad. Who knows? But those are my kind of things. I have time to read a lot of stuff I've meant to get onto, like Charlie Kirk's book, some of Ben Shapiro's stuff, even
Mhm.
digging into Jordan Peterson's first couple books
Oh
that were
yeah.
pretty in depth. I mean, I love 12 Rules for Life, but I wanted to read the Maps of Meaning, and that's like you just can't passively read that. You have to sit down and think
Oh yeah.
when you're
He
reading that
forces
one. It's
you listen to him, you read him, you have to think. Whether you love him or hate him, you have to be involved in that
Oh
conversation
yeah,
with him.
I mean, yeah, his lectures are amazing. But those are kind of what I'm reading and listening to. And what I always try to tell people, like with the message, Michael, is that the culture war is real. Um, People are the companies are basically putting a stranglehold on the digital town square, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, whatever. You know, hate speech isn't hate speech. It's basically if you don't adhere to a certain guideline, then they just ban it. They whitewash it with that hate speech label. So the biggest thing is just to get involved, whatever your politics are. Just have the discussion with somebody, like your friends or family, your closest inner circles. Like our goal really is to each one reach one, or each one bring one, to do a church analogy, is have the discussion with your inner circle, like, hey, who are you voting for, why, like, what do you believe, or why do you believe that? And again, not trying to change anybody's mind, but at least showing people what a true center to right leaning person can actually do. I mean, that's what really won me over, was speaking to my right leaning friends. I could actually have the conversation instead of my left leaning friends who, whenever they encountered something they might have disagreed with, is just go into screeching territory. So just have the conversation with people, make sure everyone's registered to vote in their county with their correct ID and what's on their ID, and just have the conversation, knock on some doors, whoever you want to vote for or be like campaign for, just get in the process. It's what our country is founded on. It's what people die for. That gives us that opportunity. So you don't have to change the world on a global scale. You just have to try to change your inner circle, and that's kind of what I want to leave you and your listeners with.
Well, I thank you for that. I think that's a great message. And actually, I think it's been a great interview. Uh,
It's been a
hold,
blast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hold on the line one second. Folks, I want to thank you for checking this out. Again, this is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here at No Soundbites Allowed. I've been speaking with Cary Poarch, who is the CNN inside whistleblower for Project Veritas. We've had a great conversation. And of course, you can let me know. You can like it, share it. You're going to see it on YouTube under No Soundbites Allowed, Facebook under Voss Political Commentary. Of course, you can reach me on Twitter at MVConsult. Folks, I look forward to hearing your comments about this, and I want everyone to be safe. Don't worry, you're going to survive coronavirus. You're going to be fantastic, folks. And with that, I thank you all and I hope you have a great day.